Now, first here on the WHAS11 night team, a wild scene described tonight by Metro Police playing out right near the U of L campus this evening, and the fatal crash investigation is still underway at this hour. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Doug Proffitt. Video just into the newsroom from our night team photojournalist Aspen Hester. This is near 4th and Winkler, and the scene actually stretches over to 4th in Montana, about a block or so away. Police say just after 7 tonight they were called to this crash. Metro Police say a man was hanging on the outside of a car when the driver swerved into oncoming traffic, causing the person on the outside of that vehicle to hit another car. That man received fatal injuries, and the driver of the car then took off from the scene. Police say they caught up with that driver a short time later near 7th and Algonquin. The LMPD homicide unit is investigating. The man on the side of the car was found dead in the street. As of just a little while ago, police were still in the intersection trying to put together what happened tonight. Also new here tonight, it's the showdown between the Metro Police Chief and the head of the Civilian Review Board. Ed Harness accuses Metro Police of lying on a warrant that led to the death of a Louisville man who was wanted for domestic violence nearly 3 years ago. The chief said on WHAS11, Harness is either incompetent or not aware of how the criminal justice system works. WHAS11 night team's Clarice Shaley and photojournalist Emma Gefter have the back and forth.
A U.S. Marshal shoots and kills Amari Cryer as he runs from police in May of 2022. Police were serving Cryer a domestic violence warrant.
We believe that there was false information provided to the charging attorney for the arresting warrant.
Louisville's Office of Inspector General is calling police action in training to question, saying Cryer's Fourth Amendment rights were violated.
Search and seizure being his death, and then also the search of the residence.
Harness's investigation with the Civilian Review and Accountability Board claims 12 wrongdoings, including false statements in the warrant and criminal complaint, and not following policy guidelines. He referenced the recently negotiated consent decree.
This is behavior that's illustrated in the findings from the Department of Justice. False information used to gain warrants to do searches. And this appears to be a continuance of that.
Right. There's a lot of pretty outlandish claims that he makes in that investigation.
Police Chief Paul Humphrey claims his officers didn't lie.
So clearly there's either some kind of incompetence or lack of awareness of the way the criminal justice system works that led him to make these decisions. And what I'm not going to do is stand by and let him drag us through the mud with things that aren't true.
The chief told us in a live interview there's body camera video with the woman in Cryer's case saying she was strangled to the point that she went unconscious during the attack. Humphrey says the initial charges against Cryer were also first reviewed by a domestic violence prosecutor.
We mess up every day. We're human beings, right? And so when we mess up, it is my job to hold ourselves accountable. It is the community's job to shine light on it. But in this process of trying to build community trust, someone who is supposed to work in partnership with both us and the community to make sure that everyone knows what we're doing needs to be competent and do the job the right way to show the public what we're doing. And that is not what happened in this case.
As claims are denied, the department has until March 9th to provide a response.
We're just going to operate understanding that the department will act in good faith.
In Louisville, Clarice Shaley, WHAS11 night team, on your side.
Harness says the investigative file is being delivered to the department's professional standards unit tomorrow, and following the guidelines in the consent decree, they have 45 days to respond. The Metro Police Department is also putting together a response to these allegations for people to review. This all comes as Louisville's consent decree is in jeopardy now after new action from Donald Trump's U.S. Department of Justice. As we told you in breaking news on this newscast last night, an internal memo has stalled all civil rights litigation and directed attorneys to notify leadership about any consent decrees that were finalized in the last 90 days. That, of course, includes the one agreed to in Louisville from December.
Anytime the federal government comes in and wants to get in the middle of local government, I don't know how that's a good thing.
And just because Trump has and his administration has decided that it's not a priority for them, we compel and we want your help to do what's right by Louisville and enter in our own agreement that we can monitor in the best way possible.
Through a statement, Louisville Mayor Craig Greenberg has committed himself and Chief Paul Humphrey to the changes they agreed to in that consent decree. The LMPD chief again was right here at WHAS 11 with us today. We asked him about the consent decree, if he was still willing to stand by it, despite a federal judge in Louisville who recently questioned even the need for it.
You know, this was a negotiated agreement, so obviously there's some things we don't like, but there's things that we were going to do anyway. And so when you look at the things that are specific, particularly to policy and training, there's a lot of that stuff in there that we were going to do anyway, or we have already done.
Chief Humphrey also noted that this negotiation process wasn't all for nothing, again pointing to the many reforms already implemented by Metro Police. Judge Benjamin Beaton, a Donald Trump appointee, has not yet ruled on the consent decree here in Louisville. Another executive order from President Trump is targeting electric vehicles and the infrastructure that was being put into place to support them. The order, nicknamed Unleashing American Energy, changes the incentives towards consumers purchasing electric vehicles. However, dealers we talked with tell us that they're optimistic about the future of electric vehicles despite the potential cuts to the incentives.
I think that fear has been overcame where incentives are no longer a requirement to allow people to make their own personal choice.
We also contacted Blue Oval SK. They, of course, are building the big electric vehicle battery manufacturing plant in Hardin County in partnership with the Ford Motor Company. The company is scheduled to start production in Kentucky this year. In a statement, they say, quote, "We will monitor changes made by the current administration and adapt as needed. However, our vision of electrification remains a key part of the future. We will continue to work with local, state, and federal agencies to achieve that mission." Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is responding to concerns about the executive order impacting electric vehicles. He was speaking today at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. Governor Beshear says that while it may interrupt the cash flow from a federal level, he's ultimately not worried.
EVs were picking up steam before the Biden administration, and they're going to continue after the Biden administration. The speed may be different. The government dollars coming in may be different. A lot of people have tried to fight the future. Nobody's ever won. We know this is a big part of the future. And as the CEO of Volvo said this week, if you're not brave enough to invest before the inflection point, you get left behind.
According to the Environmental Defense Fund, nearly $14 billion in electric vehicle and battery investments have already been announced for Kentucky. Those investments are set to help create more than 15,000 jobs. Meantime, one of Donald Trump's executive actions taken on the first day he was in office is already being challenged in court today. In court, a judge in Seattle hearing arguments challenging Donald Trump's attempt to end birthright citizenship. The judge, nominated by President Ronald Reagan, slammed the order, calling it a blatantly unconstitutional order, and signed a temporary restraining order against the measure less than an hour into the hearing.
This is step one, but to hear the judge from the bench say that in his 40 years as a judge, he has never seen something so blatantly unconstitutional sets the tone for the seriousness of this effort.
Obviously, we'll appeal it. They put it before a certain judge in Seattle, I guess, right? And there's no surprises with that judge.
It's the first of what's expected to be a series of legal proceedings weighing whether the 14th Amendment, which guarantees birthright citizenship, applies to children of undocumented immigrants and some lawful temporary residents. U.S. Justice Department argues that parents who are here illegally are not subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S. as written in the 14th Amendment. Right here, new tonight on the Night Team. Two properties formerly owned by the former Clark County, Indiana Sheriff Jamie Null and his daughter Casey Null are about to be sold for restitution. Earlier this month, the Clark County Circuit Court approved an offer for two adjacent properties in Jeffersonville, and they include the old barn where Jamie Null stored dozens of his antique and current vehicles. It sits next to a log cabin-style home where Casey Null lived. The properties were sold together for just under $630,000. The historic riverfront mansion, by the way, owned by Jamie and his estranged wife, Misty, is still up for sale. Meantime, we're learning that the trial has been delayed for the Clark County counselor and Jamie Knowles' friend, John Miller. Miller's accused of approving money for New Chapel EMS while at the same time receiving gifts from Jamie Knoll, who was running the New Chapel operation. His trial has now been postponed until October 27th. At this time, it is scheduled to be held in Clark County with a jury brought in from out of town. Today, the Kentucky Secretary of State partnered with business owners to end human trafficking here in the state of Kentucky. Secretary of State Michael Adams wants business owners to be more involved and help the state spot illegal activity. Adams calling human trafficking modern-day slavery. And employees at liquor stores, hotels, and transportation businesses are often a point of contact for women being trafficked. The director of Refuge for Women says it's important that people know the real signs of trafficking.
If the only training we have is that somebody is being snatched off the street or smuggled in a car, then we're really missing a huge percentage of what's going on out here. Most trafficking happens through somebody who's in your family or somebody who's familiar.
The Secretary of State is sharing packets of information for businesses to go over with their workers, and you can find the link to get one of those packets sent to you on the Secretary of State's website. By the way, for Indiana, a similar initiative happened this month, but this time for commercial truck drivers. Indiana State Police are saying that truck drivers are the eyes and ears of America, and they often stop in places where human trafficking can occur, like truck stops, rest areas, and warehouses, or facilities where labor trafficking is common. Indiana State Police handed out wallet cards from Truckers Against Trafficking and held 10 outreach events this month. We now know when the Sherman-Minton Bridge lane restrictions for the final inspection should finally begin. According to the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, it's all set to start on or after Tuesday, February 4th, and there will be single lane closures for east and westbound lanes on I-64. Of course, the Sherman-Minton connecting New Albany and Louisville. The closures are set to run from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. through Friday, February 7th. It comes more than a month after the work crews finally finished work on the Sherman-Minton Bridge Renewal Project.